Max Verstappen just did something that should terrify the entire Formula One paddock. In freezing temperatures, with hail falling onto the Nürburgring, crashes everywhere, and one Porsche literally bursting into flames during qualifying, Verstappen climbed into a Mercedes GT3 car for his first official Nürburgring day and immediately finished third, at the green hell, against elite endurance racing specialists who have spent years mastering this circuit. And then the story exploded even more, because Toto Wolff showed up. Not at a Formula One race. Not for a Mercedes Grand Prix weekend. He flew directly to the Nürburgring to watch Max Verstappen. And suddenly, one terrifying question started spreading through the paddock. What if Mercedes is no longer imagining Verstappen as their future, and they are already preparing for it? This was not normal qualifying. Drivers were fighting freezing 8-degree temperatures. The track was half wet, half dry. Yellow flags destroyed laps constantly. Rain turned into hail and sleet over the circuit. Most drivers struggled just to survive. Verstappen attacked. An 8-minute 18 lap around one of the hardest circuits on Earth. Third fastest overall. On day one. That should not happen this quickly. Especially at the Nürburgring. This track humiliates experienced drivers. One mistake here can destroy an entire weekend. And somehow, Verstappen already looks completely comfortable. But here is the part making the entire motorsport world nervous. The real qualifying session has not even started yet. And if Verstappen unleashes one perfect attack lap tomorrow in full qualifying trim, this weekend could become much bigger than endurance racing itself. Nobody expected Max Verstappen to look this dangerous this quickly. Because the Nürburgring is not a place where drivers arrive and instantly become fast. This circuit destroys confidence. One corner feels dry. The next feels like ice. One tiny mistake can ruin an entire lap several minutes later. And on the very first official day of the 2026 Nürburgring 24 hours, the green hell immediately turned into complete chaos. The weather was brutal from the beginning. Temperatures dropped to around 8 degrees Celsius. Parts of the circuit stayed wet while other sections slowly dried. That might not sound dramatic at first, but for drivers, it is terrifying. Imagine sprinting across a frozen parking lot while random sections suddenly become slippery without warning. That is what the Nürburgring felt like. Then the session exploded into even more chaos. A Porsche caught fire in the Schumacher S section of the circuit. Moments later, another Porsche slammed into it. Yellow flags appeared everywhere. Slow zones interrupted laps constantly. Drivers could barely complete clean qualifying runs. The entire session became survival mode. And this is where Verstappen started shocking people inside the paddock. Because while everybody else reacted cautiously to the chaos, Verstappen looked calm. Completely calm. In fact, he was the first driver from his team to head out onto the track. That matters more than people realize. Most drivers would wait. They would want safer conditions. More grip. More information from teammates. Verstappen wanted none of that. He wanted the green hell immediately. That tells you something important about his mentality this weekend. He did not arrive here for experience. He arrived to compete. At first, the lap times looked controlled. Measured. Then suddenly, everything changed. After an early installation lap, Verstappen unleashed an 8-minute 18.539 around the Nordschleife. That lap launched the Mercedes near the very top of the standings. Third place overall. And here is why that stunned experienced endurance racing teams. The Nürburgring is more than 25 kilometers long. One lap feels endless. Drivers must memorize bumps, curbs, blind corners, braking zones, wet patches, elevation changes, and sections where visibility disappears instantly. Most GT specialists spend years trying to truly master this circuit. Years. Yet Verstappen immediately looked competitive against drivers who have dedicated massive parts of their careers to endurance racing. That should make the rest of the field nervous. Because this is not Formula One anymore. GT3 cars behave completely differently. They are heavier. They slide more. They react slower. Drivers constantly fight weight transfer and tire behavior over bumps and changing grip levels. Imagine switching from a fighter jet to a heavyweight street machine in the middle of a storm. Most Formula One drivers would struggle badly with that transition. Verstappen adapted almost instantly. And that is exactly when the atmosphere around the Nürburgring started changing completely. Because suddenly, this no longer felt like a fun side project. This started feeling serious. Very serious. Especially once reports emerged that Toto Wolff was flying directly to the Nürburgring to watch Verstappen in person. And at that moment, the entire story became much bigger than endurance racing itself. And this is where the entire weekend started becoming deeply uncomfortable for Red Bull. Because every lap Verstappen completed inside that Mercedes GT3 car created an image Formula One fans never expected to see look so natural. Max Verstappen succeeding in a Mercedes. Not struggling. Not adapting slowly. Succeeding immediately. And the terrifying part is that the Nürburgring is one of the worst possible places to fake performance. This circuit exposes drivers brutally. You cannot hide behind strategy here. You cannot hide behind tire tricks. You cannot hide behind clean air. The green hell forces drivers to reveal exactly how good they really are. And Verstappen looked frighteningly comfortable. Especially once the conditions became even worse. Later in the session, rain intensified and hail started falling across the circuit. Some drivers stopped pushing entirely because the risk became too high. That decision made perfect sense. The Nürburgring in mixed weather feels almost impossible. Drivers race through forests where visibility changes every few corners. Some sections stay wet while others suddenly dry. Grip disappears without warning. Imagine driving on black ice while somebody randomly switches the lights off every few seconds. That is basically what drivers were dealing with. And somehow, Verstappen still looked calm. That calmness matters more than the lap time itself. Because endurance racing is not only about speed. It is psychological survival. Drivers must manage traffic, weather, concentration, fatigue, and pressure for hours. One tiny mistake can destroy an entire race. And this is where Verstappen started surprising people outside Formula One. Not because of raw pace. Because of how complete he suddenly looked. His confidence looked natural. His rhythm looked controlled. His feedback inside the car looked sharp. That is why Toto Wolff's presence at the Nürburgring suddenly became such a massive story. Because Wolff is not flying there simply to admire lap times. He is watching something deeper. Pressure management. Adaptation speed. Communication. Mental control. And maybe the most important thing of all, hunger. Because after years of dominating Formula One, many champions slowly lose that obsession to prove themselves in new environments. Verstappen looks like the exact opposite. He looks energized by this challenge. That changes everything. Because this no longer feels like a Formula One driver casually trying another category. It feels like a champion searching for something bigger. And the Nürburgring may be the perfect place to reveal that side of him. Especially because the hardest challenge has not even arrived yet. Night driving. And this is where the green hell becomes truly terrifying. Once the sun disappears, the Nordschleife transforms completely. Brake markers vanish. Visual references disappear. Huge sections of the circuit become almost completely dark except for the headlights of the cars. Drivers are basically racing through a black forest at more than 200 kilometers per hour. And for Verstappen, this weekend represents his first real nighttime preparation around the Nürburgring in serious race conditions. That is a massive test. Because nighttime endurance racing exposes concentration like almost nothing else in motorsport. You cannot rely on pure instinct anymore. You need patience, awareness, discipline. And maybe this is the most important detail of the entire weekend. Verstappen is not treating this experience like practice. Before the event, the message from his side was brutally simple. Success means winning. Not learning. Not participating. Winning. That mentality changes how every rival team sees him immediately. Because now the established GT teams understand one dangerous reality. Max Verstappen is not visiting the Nürburgring. He is trying to conquer it. And now the pressure reaches another level completely. Because Friday is no longer about whether Verstappen belongs at the Nürburgring. He already answered that question on day one. Now the question is much more dangerous. Can Max Verstappen actually take pole position in a Mercedes at the green hell? And this is where the story becomes brutal for the rest of the paddock. Thursday's qualifying session did not officially decide the GT3 starting grid. The real fight arrives during top qualifying. One driver. One attack lap. No traffic excuses. No strategy hiding weaknesses. Just pure commitment around one of the most intimidating circuits in motorsport. And according to expectations inside the paddock, Verstappen is highly likely to be the driver chosen for the decisive session. That possibility changes everything. Because now everybody is imagining the same terrifying scene. Cold air over the forest. 300,000 fans surrounding the Nürburgring. And Max Verstappen launching a full qualifying attack in a Mercedes while Toto Wolff watches from the garage. That is not just another motorsport moment anymore. That becomes history-level pressure. Especially because the competition is incredibly serious. BMW looked fast all session. The row cars stayed near the top. Porsche remained dangerous with the legendary Manthey entry. Audi still hovered close enough to punish any mistake instantly. These are elite endurance racing organizations. Teams with years of Nürburgring experience. Drivers who know every bump, every curb, every dangerous braking point around the Nordschleife. And somehow, Verstappen arrived and immediately became one of the main threats. That should scare everybody. Because the frightening part is that the conditions may actually improve for him. Thursday's freezing temperatures created terrible grip conditions across the circuit. The asphalt stayed cold. The tires struggled to fully switch on. Drivers constantly fought unpredictable balance. But if temperatures rise on Friday, the entire picture changes. Grip increases. Confidence rises. The circuit becomes dramatically faster. And suddenly, one terrifying possibility appears. What if Verstappen has not even shown the true pace of the Mercedes yet? Because his 8-minute 18 lap happened during complete chaos. Yellow flags interrupted runs. Slow zones destroyed rhythm. Rain and hail complicated the final phase of the session. Yet he still finished near the very top. That tells rival teams something deeply uncomfortable. If Verstappen gets one clean lap in stable conditions, he could become almost impossible to stop. And maybe Toto Wolff realizes that better than anyone else. Because from the outside, this looks like a spectacular GT racing debut. But underneath, something much bigger is forming. Formula One politics. Future possibilities. Pressure on Red Bull. And maybe even a glimpse of what motorsport could look like after Formula One eventually changes around Verstappen. Because this weekend is revealing something extremely important. Max Verstappen does not look limited to one category. He looks like the type of driver who could become dangerous anywhere. Formula One. GT racing, endurance racing, the Nürburgring. Drivers like that almost never exist. And that is exactly why the entire motorsport world suddenly cannot stop watching every lap he drives. But maybe the most shocking part of this entire weekend is not the lap time. It is what the Nürburgring is revealing about Verstappen himself. Because this does not look like a Formula One driver visiting another category for fun. It looks like somebody discovering a new obsession. And the entire paddock can feel it. The green hell exposes things other circuits hide. Patience, instinct, discipline, mental endurance. This track punishes ego immediately. Drivers who push too hard usually become victims of the circuit within minutes. And somehow, Verstappen keeps looking emotionally untouched by the pressure around him. That is rare. Especially when the entire event is slowly becoming centered around him. Fans flooded viewing areas trying to catch a glimpse of the Mercedes No. 3 car. Reports even claimed race officials introduced special measures because the Verstappen frenzy became difficult to control around parts of the circuit. Think about how insane that really is. This is not a Formula One Grand Prix weekend. This is endurance racing. And yet one driver instantly became the center of the entire event. That level of presence changes everything around a paddock. Teams notice it. Manufacturers notice it. Sponsors notice it. Especially Mercedes. Because every single camera following Verstappen around the Nürburgring creates another uncomfortable image for Red Bull. Max Verstappen succeeding in silver. And maybe the most dangerous part is how natural the entire partnership already looks. No visible tension. No adaptation struggles. No frustration. Just performance. That is exactly why Toto Wolff's appearance at the Nürburgring feels so important. Because Formula One is always watching body language. How drivers interact with engineers. How relaxed they look inside garages. How naturally they fit within different teams. And Verstappen already looks strangely comfortable in this environment. That creates questions. Very dangerous questions. Especially because Verstappen's future beyond 2026 remains one of the biggest topics in Formula One right now. And weekends like this only make the noise louder. But here is where the story becomes even more fascinating. The Nürburgring is not giving Verstappen an easy introduction. It is testing him brutally. Cold temperatures, mixed grip, rain, hail, crashes, night driving preparation. This is almost the hardest possible way to learn endurance racing. And somehow, Verstappen keeps responding like somebody who has already spent years here. That is why rival teams are becoming uncomfortable. Because drivers normally need time before becoming genuine Nürburgring threats. They must learn traffic management, night references, tire rhythm, fuel strategy, mental pacing. Verstappen already looks ahead of schedule, far ahead. And now everything builds toward the one moment capable of changing the entire weekend. Top qualifying. One lap. One chance. One tiny mistake away from disaster. Or one perfect lap away from creating one of the most iconic Nürburgring qualifying performances in recent memory. And honestly, the pressure could not be bigger. Because if Verstappen takes pole position in a Mercedes at the green hell while Toto Wolff watches from the garage, this story explodes far beyond endurance racing. At that point, it stops being a cool side project. It becomes a statement. A warning to the rest of motorsport. Maybe even a preview of a future Formula One is not ready for yet. And that is exactly why every single lap Verstappen drives right now suddenly feels important.